And I'd like to now invite to the lectern the Deputy Secretary General, Amina Mohammed, a tireless worker on all of these issues, including on the voices of survivors. Deputy Secretary General, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Pramila, for that incredible statement that reminds us why we do what we do every day to try to bring an end to this scourge. But excellencies and special recognition to Margaret Wallstrom and Zainab Bangura, on whose shoulders we stand with this mandate, distinguished guests, colleagues, friends. It really is truly an honor to be with you here commemorating the 10th anniversary of the establishment of the mandate on sexual violence in conflict. Sexual violence in conflict has been called history's greatest silence, the least reported, the least condemned. The creation of this mandate a decade ago reflected the UN's commitment to highlight, prevent, and seek justice for this crime. It also sent a clear message that the sexual violence that happens during times of upheaval and conflict is not the inevitable collateral of war, but a horrific violation of human rights and international law. In the past decade, the United Nations has responded to the demands of victims and survivors by creating a global normative framework and a set of institutional arrangements, including the Security Council resolutions, investigative mechanisms, reporting frameworks, and the Office of the Special Representative of the Secretary General. Since Special Representative Patton took office in 2017, she has made a survivor-centered approach a main priority of her mandate. The presence of many victims and survivors in this room today demonstrates her commitment to this approach. And Pramila, I would like to sincerely salute your leadership and commitment to the women survivors of sexual violence in conflict. Excellencies, distinguished guests, over the past 2 years, together with Special Representative Patton and other heads of UN agencies, I've had the privilege of undertaking a series of solidarity missions with the African Union on women, peace, security, and development. And I'd like to recognize again Bintou Diop here, our Special Representative from the AU. We have visited countries and regions where the challenges are especially acute, including Nigeria, the Democratic Republic of Congo, South Sudan, the Sahel, Afghanistan, and just this past week, the Horn of Africa, including Somalia, Eritrea, Ethiopia, Djibouti, and Sudan. Through many of my meetings with survivors in many of these countries, I heard directly the profound consequences of sexual violence. The cost to individuals, families, communities, and the social fabric is horrifying. And sadly, it carries through to the next generations. In my own country, Nigeria, I've witnessed in ways in which women and girls are targeted for abduction, forced marriage, and sexual abuse by Boko Haram. This is not unique to Nigeria. Sexual violence has been a recurrent feature of recruitment by terrorist groups, who may promise marriage and sexual slaves to young men, treat women as the spoils of war, and in some contexts use trafficking and sexual slavery as a form of revenue. These young women and girls are often failed by the justice system, but equally by the lack of services and support and reintegration options. In South Sudan, we met with women who, when they left the relative safety of their refugee or IDP camps to fetch wood and water for their families, knew they were at high risk of being raped, but had to weigh the alternative. If their male family members were to leave the camps, they would be killed. This is not a choice that any woman should have to make ever. In the Horn of Africa, we met women escaping conflicts who were then abused or trafficked while fleeing. In the face of these horrific stories, I'm left with the same question I'm sure each of you has. What drives an individual to such brutality? How is it that sexual violence continues to be perpetrated with almost complete impunity? And how, better, can we prevent crime while supporting the short and the long-term needs of our survivors? It is clear that our actions have fallen behind our words, and that resolutions and laws are only as useful as political and financial commitment to implement them. Distinguished representatives of member states, here today we call for your concrete actions at all levels. If those who are most vulnerable, the victims of violence and abuse, are not heard, we will fail to uphold the core promise of the 2030 Agenda of leaving absolutely no one behind. As a first step, we must continue to place survivors at the center of our efforts, decision-making, programs, and policies should be informed by those who know what is needed. The UN continues to stand ready to support your efforts in all our efforts. Let us mark the next decade of this mandate by implementing international norms on the ground through tangible action that improves the lives of all women. Let us work harder to put an end to sexual violence and conflict. And I would say, tie a knot, as in the words of Nelson Mandela, Madiba. It always seems impossible until it's done. I thank you.